Welcome back to Mindset Hacks with Ida, a segment of the podcast where we review relevant topics and give you practical tips to raise your resilience mindset and mental wellness. And on this episode, we discuss a very common question: when do I quit, or when do I engage in grit?
Yes, and I am the aforementioned Ita.
That's a cool question, right? Because I must give credit, because I was just listening to Angela Duckworth. She's like, the top person when it comes to grit and resilience. You think of her, and she was doing a podcast called No Stupid Questions with Dubner. It's quite it's a producer. So I found this question very fascinating. I realized that people ask this question a lot. You think so?
Yeah, I think so. Cause, I guess it's natural. Like in your endeavor to do something worthy, right? That you'll face doubts and thinking about yourself. That sometimes when circumstances pushes you away from what you think you should have been achieving, then naturally the question comes to mind, whether is this a endeavor that you should stick on to continue to do, or would you want to try something else?
Yeah, and I think it's impossible to give a direct answer, right? Because it really depends on so many contexts. But even though this podcast is about resilience and keeping on, I do think there are times where we need to take a step back and realize that the trade-offs or realize that maybe it's time to do something else. There's a greater trade-off doing something else. So that said, right, I think to kind of give some structure to this podcast, we will actually divide it into 3 segments. Okay, I think there's kind of a thesis statement, it's like GPS and that. So the thesis statement is this, that it's impossible to give a direct answer. It really depends on the individual's choice, and that depends on certain specific considerations that they need to take, right, which we'll explore later. That said, right, I do believe that assuming you want certain outcomes, there are many times where people quit too soon, right, out of fear, baggage, or insecurity, and they are so close to their goal and they quit before that. And there are also times, right, where quitting, or rather inverted commas, letting go, right, could be a wise option, especially if it's affecting your mental health, or especially if it's no longer aligned to your values or your outcomes. So today's podcast, we're going to explore all 3 paragraphs or all 3 topics, and then give you practical tips and insights into each area.
It really sounds like a GP statement now, no? Thesis, then point 1, point 2, point 3, rebuttal, then conclusion.
I guess that's how it's structured, because we want to give your value to take back, so that it's more structured. I think it's kind of easy.
How I wish, you can just watch this podcast and say, quit now, go, quit now, then everything's settled, right?
Don't use it as an excuse to quit, but we'll definitely not give you a one-sided thing. We'll definitely give you multiple sides of the thing, and see see what information you take back, and then you make your own decision from there. Yeah, so let's get straight into it. First of all, let's talk about considerations. There's this in social science. There's this theory called social exchange theory, where we weigh benefits against the risks of making a certain decision, or being with a certain somebody, or being in a relationship. And then we make the decision based on that. And of course, this is not a relationship, but I guess there's certain overlaps in the sense that you are forming relationships with the things you're pursuing because you're so attached to it, right? So maybe before we discuss the factors, Ita, what factors do you consider, right, when you kind of make a decision to carry on or to quit?
I don't know whether I'm a very good example to ask for this, because I'm very stubborn and willful sometimes. So it's like a counterintuitive thing. But first of all, when I decide to quit something, right, the first consideration I have is whether do I still enjoy doing what I do, right? And this one sometimes is a very big factor for me, because there's things that are mundane, right? Then there are things that are truly what you don't like anymore, right? So that is a very big criteria for me. Second of all is when I'm making this decision, right, is whether am I being influenced by somebody, right? Because society tells you a lot of things, right? And I feel that it's important to sometimes clear all the noises first and sit down and you really evaluate whether this is something for you or not before you decide to, jabo.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And I think to kind of give some structure, probably split these factors into 3 main points. I think Ita roughly covered each of these. I think the first one is authenticity and values, whether it's authentic to you, right? Listening to your inner voice. The second one will probably be appropriateness and whether you enjoy it. That's Ikigai lah. So we'll talk a little bit about Ikigai. If you haven't heard of it, don't worry. We'll explain it in a while. It's like Japanese for life worth lah. It's a framework to kind of decide whether your outcomes are realistic according to your talents and values. And the last thing, I think the most important thing is your vision and your outcomes. Whether it really ties in, what you're doing ties into your vision and some sort of outcomes that you want. Okay, so let's start with authenticity and values first. So I basically gave this question on Instagram, and I think I want to read out some of your statements. Hopefully you'll watch this podcast as well. But Leo, it's a friend of mine from secondary school. Quite an amazing guy. He actually made a lot of money trading wine and spirits and basically at the streets he made a lot of money. He's a very street smart guy. I was just saying that after a while he got tired of the chase. Got tired of the chase and now he's more into spirituality. He said the chase is never ending. But he did say that, I quit when pushing on compromises my guiding principles or core values. And do you have any examples you feel that in your life or in other people you see?
Pushing against core values. As in naturally the easiest example would be when you for example for me, right, as an actor, the biggest common question to decide whether to quit or not is whether do I quit pursuing acting, because fundamentally acting, unless you make it big, if not, is very hard for you to secure a more stable income, so as to speak, right? So actually that's the choice that some people have to make, right? Because some people, I've seen actors whose guiding principles is about money, right? That they believe that they need to live life on a certain amount of wealth, right? So because of that, they chose to right, when it stops being practical, right? But I also seen actors who believe that life is just like that, right? Then they rather pursue acting and not chase after the buck, right? So they really just wholehearted go into acting, but on top of that, even though while they are continuing their pursuit for acting, they still spend the time and the effort to take maybe a second job or a third job just to keep up with their finances.
Sure, that makes sense. And I think also that's kind of linked to the outcomes. They're kind of very clear of the outcomes, right? Or rather have some idea that this is their guiding principles. But I think for a lot of people, right, they put expectations on themselves. I just came from a week of programs and wow, some students are just so heavy. They're so heavy because you can tell they're bogged down by expectations and just not appreciating education, not appreciating life. I think it's the same for a lot of people also. Eventually we go out, right, and then we don't be authentic and true to ourselves, and we kind of take other people's expectations and put it on ourselves. So I think right off the bat, right, this is something you can consider whether or not this is something that is really aligned to what you do, or is it somebody else's dream, somebody else's goal that you're just taking on for yourself. Because eventually that lead to suppression and negative resentment even. Have you faced a situation where you feel like someone's imposing on you and you're acting out those values? Not so much.
Actually, not directly being imposed, right? But okay, just right off the bat, I'd like to clarify that you are being affected by people one way or another, right? So for me, my biggest example is when I decided to leave school, right? So for people who don't know, I dropped out of college after being very clear that I'm not going to use that degree to do anything with my life. That's why I decided to quit, right? This is not a PSA for people to quit school. No, please stay in school, okay?
This podcast is linked to schools as well.
Please don't. This is not a PSA to quit school. I have to clarify the statement over and over again.
No worries, I think people understand.
Yeah, so I always thought that going to college was like a natural thing, right? Yeah. So previously, when I was schooling and I was acting at the same time, right? When I was secondary school, JC, and college, right? I was taught somehow one way or another to look down on the work that I was doing, right? In the sense that service industry is not something worth pursuing, right? But when I was in college, then I met a few people. Then after that, then I really got bored with what I was doing and everything. Then I really sit down and I read through and I think through about what I was trying to do, right? And the biggest thing that I realized, right, was that a lot of things that people tell me, right, one is based on their perspective and their agenda.
Right.
Two is also sometimes not because of their fault, because the bigger environment teaches them to do this. Okay. So but I was really taught to break out of my environment. So
Sure.
because of that, I was very clear that I'm going to leave school despite what influences that I have, whether is it my parents, whether is it friends, whether is it relatives or whatever it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they say when your inner voice is louder than all the noise around you, right? That's where you really make authentic decisions. So, yeah, I guess that's the first thing you can consider when it comes to authenticity. And I think this is also a good transition into the next factor, which is on appropriateness. Right? Authenticity and appropriateness. Because I say I cannot say I want to become a K-pop star or like maybe a ballerina at this stage, right? So what premise, right? Is it authentic? What premise is it like unrealistic? So I think a good framework to use is Ikigai. So I think we can edit in the framework here.
I will put a big circle.
But
the Venn diagram
it's
thing.
very simple. I mean, some diagrams have 4 spaces, but to keep it simple, I think we just stick with 3. So the 3 circles are what you care about, what you're passionate about, what you are good at, or what you're inclined towards, and the last one is what the market needs. So the overlap between these 3 is your Ikigai and where you should potentially explore and find something that you can do, love doing, at the same time still pays you. Yeah. So yeah, you think about how do you is it applicable to the work that you're doing now? Curious.
Yes, of course. When you look at the work I'm doing, I'm a content producer and everything, right? And acting and stuff like that. The biggest thing is that whether the market needs it or not, right? So for my end, there's no lack of photographers, videographers, or content producers in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
Right. This is the trend. Everybody's pushing towards it.
Yeah.
So there will definitely be a need. Right, whether you can fight within the need or not, that is highly debatable question based on your skill level and everything, lah. Right. So the next question is, are you passionate about your work? Right, because doesn't mean that the market goes there means you should go there. Right. This may sound counterintuitive with Ikigai, right? But I feel that ultimately you need to do something that makes you happy, lah. Right. For some people, it may be that you need to do it on a day-to-day basis. Right. That keeps you happy on a day-to-day basis. Some people just need to do work that they can see the outcome and they are happy with.
Right.
Yeah. So it's highly dependent on the person.
Sure.
Right. Then what's the last one again? Ikigai.
Ikigai, it's market need. You actually covered all already.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's market need, whether you enjoy and whether you care about your work.
Yeah. So caring about the work is another thing, right? I feel that we are taught from young that you just need to go and make the money.
Okay.
Right. Whether is it going to office, whether going to work, right? Your parents tell you go and be a lawyer, go and be a doctor, go and be a banker or stuff like that. But they never ask you, do you want to be a lawyer? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a banker?
True.
Right. So I think sometimes there is an overemphasis on the outcome, which is whether is it money, whether is it fame, whether is it a materialistic ones, right? But sometimes you also need to think about can you do this on a day-to-day basis for like 10, 20, 30 years, right? There's no shortage of examples of bankers halfway transition because they cannot take the life anymore, right? Or there are no shortages of examples of random people having midlife crisis because they cannot take the work anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. So these 3 I think is a very good fundamental principles to think about, right?
Yeah, I mean that's great. I mean that's a great kind of summary of it. I mean my experience, right, is very similar, in a sense that I first came out. Of course, you know my story. If you don't know, I guess you can check out the previous episode. But coming out of depression, right, I was just so eager to make it in life. That but along the way, I realized that okay, what do I care about? Mental health issues. I care about serving people. I care about impacting people, raising them up, right? What am I good at? Everything to do with my face and my voice.
That's why we are still doing this.
I tried, right? And then what's the market need? So basically, even before I started a training company, Rebound and Resilience, even before we started this podcast, right, we tried many other things, right? I was like a clown. Okay, not really a clown. I was like a party host, lah. Yeah, for kids' birthday parties.
Right, wow. Okay.
I realized, okay, pretty fun, but after a while, my goodness. Cannot. It's not sustainable because the kids are just crazy, right? And then also did a lot of hosting as well. Did a lot of freelance public speaking. So pretty much trying. Of course, we had mentors, and eventually I went to business as well. So it's really about finding the overlap and trying multiple things. And once you find 1 or 2 things, right, you go deep into that. Yeah. So this is just something that a side point that you can note,
I would like to add something here, right? Because Most of our audience are basically students, right? Hopefully students are millennials, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel that a lot of us, we are very restricted by knowing what we know, right? You only know school, right? Only know what the teachers tell you. So actually, I feel that at some point you need to take the time to go and explore a lot of things. Don't let just schooling, your work and your day-to-day life restrict what you think that's gonna be it for you. Yeah.
Okay, great. That transitions to our last point when it comes to considerations, like when it comes to quitting or carrying on, and that is the most important thing in my opinion, is having your vision and your outcomes. What's the outcomes you want, right? And that's what you're doing tied back to this. So I think, give the example of the previous podcast, I think you should listen to it. Of course, it's a lot more scientific than ours. That's Angela Duckworth's podcast, right? But she said this, that, when she was dating other people, she was very clear, like after 1, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if it doesn't align to what she wants, she quits. Right? Inverted commas, she quits, so she let go of it. And that outcome in mind actually helps her to make a decision a lot easier. And again, one person on Facebook, on Instagram, her name is Queenie, it's a nice name. She said that, she quoted the podcast, she said that if the passion isn't there, if you're doing it for a different set of goals, then you can see how the payoff, even if you get it, isn't as meaningful. And if it doesn't align and contribute to society in any form, you quit. Whereas when it's engaged or meaningful in society, then you can carry on. I think for her, of course, contribution to society is what she values.
Yep.
It's an outcome. So she's using that as a kind of a means, as a yardstick to decide her outcomes. Also, rather to decide whether to go on or not. So vision and outcomes, do you agree with that?
I do agree. Like, honestly, if you are very clear about what you're gonna do, then naturally it's gonna be easier for you. That's a given. We don't need to talk about that. But I feel that what we should discuss further, right, is the fact that when you are thinking about quitting, right, most of our audiences actually really they are in the midst of whether to decide whether what they want to do. I feel that's the case with our audiences. So at some point we also need to let you guys know that the way moving forward, right, is really to know what you want, and that does not come easy, right? Whether is it on a day-to-day search, whether is it trying to find out what you truly want, there's a lot of considerations, right? Only when the decision is always easy when you know what you want, right? The problem with if you are thinking about quitting, right, is because you don't know what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so searching for vision, searching for outcome is very, very important. That being said, you shouldn't stress too much if you cannot find your vision. Right. At a certain point in time, vision can only come, and vision will change. It's not like vision won't change. So I feel that what people can do as a rule of thumb is to look as far as you can see and decide whether what you are doing now is it effective or whether is it achieving to what you want to.
And also linked it to authenticity and ikigai, right? Is this thing what you really want, or is it something someone else's want for you? So that's another question. But one way of looking at it, right, I think Hong Ming is the one. I think we have a mutual friend who's very wise. And he said this, to me, because I've made so many decisions, right? But he said this to me, like, for him, what he does is that he pictures himself on his deathbed. A bit morbid, right? But he says he pictures himself on his deathbed, and he reverse engineers the situation. The situation. He says that if I don't do this, right, will I regret this on my deathbed or not? And he kind of puts everything into perspective, because that's also how I made the decision with the podcast as well. And I don't regret it at all, because it's just something that my heart needs to do. And of course, considering other factors, finances are fine and everything, and of course it's aligned to the brand, it spreads awareness, whatever, but ultimately the decision is where I regret it on my deathbed. And the answer is yes. That's why I proceeded with it. And interestingly, right, there's another book that I read in the past called 5 Secrets to Discover Before You Die. It's a very fascinating book. You can check it out. It's basically an author that interviewed more than 100 people who are above 100 years old. So they interviewed people who are above 100 years old, right? And interview across them and say what are the common themes or life advice that they give. And actually one life advice they gave, right, was having no regrets. Having no regrets. And interestingly, right, a lot of them said that they did not regret the things that they did but failed, but they always regret the things they did not do. That in the heart they want to do it, right, but they just did not do it because of expectations, because of certain things. and then on so what they regret it later on.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
I feel that, I feel that there's merit to what you're saying lah. Is that I feel that humans always fear and regret things that they don't know.
Okay.
Right. So having attempted something and failing at it will give you more. I guess certainty and fulfillment, closure, right? Yeah. Closure that then rather than you not doing and wondering about it.
You hit the nail on the spot, like Ita. Yeah. What a wise old Ita.
Right.
Closure. I think that's the word lah. Because you always be thinking, always be nagging at what if I did this, right? And so like shit, screw it, let's do it, and then we see how it goes after that. And ask yourself what's the worst case scenario, right? If you can live with the worst case scenario, then just go ahead with it.
Honestly, I feel that most Singaporeans can live with the worst case scenario. It's just that how what you expect in life, that's the ones that's screwing you up, right? If you have a certain expectation that how your life is going to be, right, then naturally, when it fails the expectation, naturally you have regrets, right?
Okay.
So I would just like to point out the fact that not say the fact but I would just like to mention that whether to quit or not, right, sometimes it's just hints of doubt. It doesn't mean that the thought coming means you have to make the decision immediately. One thing that I try to do is whether to take a step back and chill first. Right? If your mind is not at balance, you cannot make a proper decision that you won't regret.
Yeah. Okay.
Then the other side of thing is also this, that once you make the decision, then don't regret it lah.
Yeah.
Don't keep going back and think what if, right? Because if there's so many what if, right, then that's the point of parallel universes, right? But that's not that's not for you to figure out. It's for other people to figure out, right?
Okay, I love it, Ita. I love it how we're also at 20 minutes already.
Yeah.
But
this is gonna be a first 30-minute segment. That's 30 minutes. Woo!
No, we still have 2 more things to cover.
2 more things to cover. Oh, sorry.
I said it because we're not gonna finish right.
Right. I thought we are finally gonna make it a 30-minute segment that is 30 minutes.
We're only at the first one, so I mean we covered the first one, which is considerations. I hope we gave you 3 considerations to think about lah. But I think the other 2 aspects of the thesis statement is when do you carry on, right, and when do you quit. I think we'll explore that a little bit deeper also, right? So when do you carry on? I think in my opinion, right, this is very relevant because I think far too often people quit too soon. Right? They quit too soon, assuming that the outcome is something they want, assuming that fulfillment is found in the journey and in the process of overcoming. A lot of people quit before they actually reach their potential. Out of so many factors, right? And there's a quote that says happiness is a progressive realization of worthwhile goal, right? It's in the striving, facing yourself that you gain fulfillment. If that's the premise, right, then I think a lot of people are missing out.
Okay. This is what I feel, right? Okay. I feel that a lot of people think the mid-end goal is the end goal. That's why they quit very soon. So for example, is this. I met one of a few karate practitioners the other day, right? So I was talking to them about it started with the understanding of children's black belt. Is it the same as adult black belts, right? Yeah. But then the biggest thing that I learned from them, right, is that actually black belt is not the end. Black belt is just the start, right? This is sometimes I feel that people don't have the correct understanding. It's like looking at a lot of people who you look at let's say dancing, for example. Yeah. If you look at the dancer, you say, oh, she's performing normally. Actually, that takes a long time to get that normal.
Yep.
Right. It's like schooling like that. It takes a long time for you to be able to gain enough to be able to make it in the society.
Yep.
So sometimes people's perspective of time and effort is a bit too skewed.
Okay.
Yeah. People think that whatever effort that they're doing now, right, should be enough to reach the goal that they want. Okay. But usually that's a misguided thinking, because by right to get that level, right, it takes a lot more just to get there. So you can argue that it's starting wrong, but on my end I feel that if the person when the person look at it, then they should see, oh, maybe I should try persisting a bit longer, persisting a bit more, just to overcome that.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at I think I saw a graph somewhere. If you look at the learning curve, right? There's the happy learning, then there's a lot of growth. Then there's the slump, right? Then after that, there's the peak.
Exponential growth.
So the slump is the hardest, and yet
it is.
And yet the slump is the closest to the goal already.
It is. That's very good analogy. Honestly speaking, it's like 3 feet from goal, right? The book, 3 feet from goal, but you quit before that. The most recent example is in the programs that I've run, right? The last year was very dry because of COVID. But, I just worked at it, kept at it every single day, keep to the daily disciplines, reach out to teachers. And you don't know, like in Jan this month, it was just, wow, it's explosion of programs, like 7, 8, 9 programs, all in 1 month. Yeah. But if I kind of quit during the slump, right, I would not have experienced this goal, so to speak. And I think also just knowing that, right, intellectually knowing that there is potentially something coming, right, helps. But it also helps a lot to appreciate the process and find satisfaction in that growth, in that crap. You call it embracing the suck.
Yeah. I've actually the best examples for this artistic person, right? So the best example for this are usually artists. Like if you look at the most successful musicians, the most successful actors, for example, the most successful whether it's artists or whatever it is, you look at them, right? Most of them won't tell you that they got into this line because they want to make a lot of money, right? Most of them will tell you that they got into this line because they really love what they do, right? The process of doing it trumps the end result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to end off with a quote, right? Me, Ida know this, and I think it's one of my favorite quotes that I live by, is that the greatest reward for a person's dedication to excellence is not what he or she gets from it, it's what he or she becomes through it. And that process of becoming, right, I can say for myself, has been way more fulfilling and satisfying than actually reaping the tangible rewards itself. And I think this is important because, like, we got to speed up a little bit, right, Ita? But, I think I do want to quote certain people that in Instagram that she reached out to me, and they said that one person said, I don't believe in quitting. She said, like, if the outcome is something that can be done, then it's just about finding a different way to do it. And I don't want to belabor this point because other episodes we talk at length about this, right? Episode 2, episode 3, reclaiming control, reframing perspective, how do you extract lessons from failure, all that's important. I think people quit too soon when they don't have the skill sets to do that. So go and check that out. On top of that, right, I think I want to explore this also. It's very interesting. This girl called Tammy, I think she's a dancer. This girl called Tammy, she said that, I want to read this out. I think, of course, we can put it on the screen. But she said, I think sometimes, right, you just know deep down. Like, even when it seems impossible and everyone's telling you there's no point pursuing it, but deep down, this particular journey isn't meant to be over for you, and you just got to keep going with nothing but faith. At least that's what I experienced in my dance journey when doctors were telling me that you shouldn't go back to dancing for medical reasons and told me that I was being stubborn, because I am. But I just somehow knew that this journey is not over, that I have to find another path. And like, there's no guarantees, but just go forward in faith because you know somehow that this is meant for you.
Actually, if you look at most of the entrepreneurs, right, actually most of them encountered this, right? So example is this, Zappos. Okay, Singaporeans might not know Zappos, right?
The Delivering Happiness, but the founder, he passed away recently, right? That's
no.
Happiness. That one's a different one.
It's okay. It's a shoe website company that's popular in US that got bought over by Amazon. So if you don't know the story, right, you should go and check it out. It's damn crazy. So what happens to the guy was that the guy was like down to his last dollar. That the company is not going to survive if he's not going to get any funding. So because of that, he went to banks and borrowed money, right? Then he didn't get any loans.
Yeah.
So what he did, right, was he mortgaged his house, then used that house to go and borrow money. Then just because of that, then he tied over, right?
Right.
Yeah. PSA, we are not telling you to go and mortgage, please don't do nonsensical things. But sometimes, I feel that the most important lesson throughout that is the clarity, right? In a sense that, you will never know, like it seems so crazy to go and take a separate loan out of your house, right? Just to fund your business, and your business might not even be doing that well, right? But the fundamental thing is this: if you are very clear about what outcomes you want and how it's going to help you, right, then naturally the decisions becomes easy. As what you mentioned, the decision is not even a decision after that. It's just it's just like, oh, I should be doing this. It's like a natural thing, right?
Exactly. To other people, it seems unrealistic, right? But you deep in your heart, you know that this is the path you have to go on to. You just know intuitively that, like, given your circumstances and your authenticity, like, you have to take this path and do this action. Thanks for sharing the example. I think even for me as well, right? I think there's certain times in my life where many people are telling me that, hey, it's not wise and whatever, or it's not something that, but deep down I knew. For example, like switching from badminton to tennis in Sec 2, Sec 3, I just knew, like, it's not a completely unrealistic decision. It was just that I was playing badminton, I was in the school team, I was kind of giving that spot up to an unknown. So on the surface, people might think that, okay, that's a bit like not a very wise decision, but I made it because in my heart, I knew I want to pursue tennis and potentially make it at the national level. I knew that I would regret it if I don't do it. And I also knew that it was appropriate because without proper training, I was competing against people with proper training in outside competition. So it was kind of not a completely decision based on complete hokey pokey.
Yeah.
There was some realism behind it, just like how the founder also probably knew his stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think the biggest takeaway is this, that if you are thinking about quitting something or persisting in something, right? Quitting is very important. The thing that you're going to jump next, right, cannot be something that there's no anchorage, meaning that you cannot say, okay, today I'm going to be a pro sports player when you have never played a sport before, right? Then there has to be some examples that you can make it, or at least you enjoy it to that particular level. Then you can think about whether is it wise for you to jump, right?
Yeah.
The same thing for quitting also. As you mentioned, right? Can you take the consequences from now if you want to quit?
Yeah.
Like, there's like 1,001 people who want to quit their jobs, right? But the reason that they don't quit is because they cannot take it, right?
Yeah.
If they have no kids, they have no house loan to pay, they don't have wives or husbands or partners or whatever, then they can quit very easily, right? Then they can like go and live off the street for a while before they go in. Yeah.
Cool. So I think this is important, but I also believe that some people they just know, but some people don't really know.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I think I can't figure out that answer for you. I think you really have to go and figure it out yourself. But if you know deep down inside that this is something you want to do, then you have to take the courage and just jump. Last example before I move on to the last point, right, is Tiara. So Tiara Yap is a content producer, an actor, cast member in SGAG.
Right.
I interviewed her in one of the past podcasts, and she was sharing that she flipped a coin. Very interesting. She said that all along she enjoyed performing theatre, but she rationalized it out of her mind. She said, okay, it's not important, studies are important, blah, 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 performing won't get me anywhere. And one time she was auditioning for a play. She said that I'm not sure what to do, whether should I audition or not. So she said, okay, I'm going to flip a coin. So she flipped a coin. When a coin dropped on tails, she said her heart sank. And at the moment she knew that she had to audition for it.
Yeah. No, so actually sometimes you already know a decision. I think that's the point.
Yeah.
You already know. It's just that there are a lot of other factors that's clouding your judgment. Right. So that's why the flipping the coin thing works. It's not that you really flip the coin and the God tells you what to do, right? It's when you flip the coin, deep down in your heart, the thing that you want to do comes out, right?
Yeah.
That flipping of the coin moment is a triggering thing when you dedicate yourself to only fulfill only obey that particular decision that you're gonna make, right? Your inner self will come out. Right. So
Flip a coin.
Yeah, flip. So I feel that for this is going to be a bit harder for students because they have not seen enough to understand what their decision potentially can.
Drop us a PM if you want some advice. I think. But I love it that one day, people look back and they succeed and they say, hey, because of this podcast.
Oh my god, wow. Okay.
That would be worth more than
that would be the
but we still need to pay the bills.
It will be the biggest contributions, right? So but please pay the we need to pay the bill. So we are actively looking for sponsors if you are listening to this.
Okay. So that concludes the second one on when to carry on. I hope it gives you some perspective. The last one is when to quit. I think people don't talk about this enough because in society it's all about tough times don't last, tough people do. For example, our podcast on the surface it might seem like you must carry on, right? But I do need to say that sometimes it takes courage to quit and know when to quit. And that's what we want to explore. When do you know? So first off, read off some people sharing, right? Jia Wen and Terence, I think they said that you quit when it's eating more than stretching your hands out to grab it. Okay, David Goggins might disagree, but that's a different thing. Or Terence said that when it's affecting your mental health, right? So, and I want to share something very interesting, right, that I felt related to me. I was listening to Angela's podcast, and she was just sharing a study of gritty people, very gritty people. So scientists did a study where they got gritty people, not so gritty people, to do a set of anagrams. It's like math problems, some basically puzzles. And intentionally, right, set some puzzles that cannot be completed. And then, of course, they realized that the gritty people were more so involved in those puzzles that can't be completed, right, that they missed out eventually completing more puzzles and did worse compared to the people that were less gritty. So this kind of links to this term called perseverate. It's a very chim term, or rather created by scientists, right, social scientists. But what it means is that when persevering leads to maladaptive practices, when you're so caught up in something, right, that you are so stubborn that it leads your mental health to be affected, it leads you to maladaptive practices.
Never mind, we'll find a way to include the proper pronunciation somewhere.
So this is another thing. Right? This is a great example.
Yeah.
Like, I want to get it perfect. This is a great example of my stubbornness.
Yeah.
But it's called maladaptive. Yeah. I mean, the pronunciation will be there, but it basically means that what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to share my personal example with this. Before I ask Ita to share, I've been subject to this a lot. Honestly, because I'm very stubborn type A personality, right? There's sometimes where my mind tricks myself into thinking that I can carry on and do well on this, when in reality, right, I'm just screwing myself up. One example is probably in gambling. So the thing is this, right? Like your mind tricks you to think that you're investing or you can beat the market. But in reality is that, the first time this happened was actually after to be fair, I was in state of mania back then. So anyway, that one is reality is warped. But I was doing online, I was basically going to Singapore pools and doing stuff here and there, soccer betting, everything. And interestingly, right, I made like 1 point something. Okay, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how I did that. Tennis as well. But I lost it all. And I think I was negative like 500 after that. But when you're in it, right, your mind tricks you and say that, I can predict this, I can use certain patterns. When in hindsight, you look back, right, it's just crap. Another example was when I went to poker. To be honest, right, that was, I think right, a period of time I was in poker.
Yeah.
That was a void. I was trying to fill a void of importance. Because when you go all in, you feel like you're important, right? So I was trying to fill a void, but I convinced myself that I could become a skill level to make money from people. And now, this one, to be fair, right, poker is not like gambling. Poker is actually a skill you can develop. There are professional poker players. But my mind tricked myself into believing, right, that I could compete against people who have been playing for a couple of years and beat money from them. So, crazy stuff. I went to different places, right? People with like full sleeve and were playing. To be fair, it's not illegal. Okay, back then it was Chinese New Year, so technically it's not. And also there's certain home games which technically is among friends, so it's not illegal. But long story short, right, I lost about 5K.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know what your thoughts about this.
No, okay. No, I had a similar poker example recently. Because New Year, right, I was getting with a few friends that we will play. No money, right, it's just playing. Then I realized that I made, like, there were times where I struggled, like, persevere, right, then I win big. Right, but I realized that I didn't last all the way. Right. The people who usually last all the ways are the ones that look at the cards, then they immediately decide whether they drop it or not. Right. The people who folded early are the people ones who lasted the longest. Okay. Right. So I feel that there's merit on both sides. Right. Sometimes it's too early to quit. But sometimes it's too late to continue to. Yeah. So I think learning to quit is a skill. Right.
Poker is a great example because you need to actually let go of certain hands.
Yep.
You need to let go of it. And it's okay. I feel like I'm promoting poker here, but very simply, right, you just need to get worse hands to continue and better hands to fold. That's the whole premise of poker.
Yeah. So I feel that using poker as an example, right? Sometimes the decision is always easier to be made in front than at the back. Meaning that when you first think about a task, it's easier to decide whether to continue or to drop it, rather than while you are doing it already. It's like why people who invested like 10,000 into a particular stock, then after a while they cannot drop it. It's because they have already invested. If the decision to decide whether to invest versus the decision to decide whether to invest more is a different ball game altogether, right? So the easiest thing is don't randomly take up stuff, right? But in the middle, when you're stuck in it, right, I feel that the best thing that you can do is really a balanced perspective, right? It's how are you going to gain a balanced perspective while you're stuck in that rut, whether to go on or to quit, right? So pros and cons list is a very easy thing, right? But sometimes it may be harder for you also to realistically put down the pros and the cons. So what I would recommend you to do, right, is to just speak to people who have both sides perspective. Then from there, then you can see already, right? Because it's like the problem with US side, right? The polarization of the voting parties, right? It's partly because both sides don't want to listen to what each other want to say, right? When one side says something, the other side just say, "Oh no, you're lying," right? Or this is a scam or whatever nonsense it is, right? So the easiest thing and the hardest thing is actually really just to absorb other people's opinions or facts or whatever it is, right? Then you make a decision, right? Doesn't mean that you have to be influenced by what they say, but it's also important for you to listen to what they say.
Sure. I think that's when you're really in it and you find it difficult, right? Like it's find it difficult. I guess another thing you can consider also, one of the factors you can consider is your mental health and how it affects you. Because I think that mental health should be a priority.
Yeah.
And if you need to pause at certain stages to recalibrate, if it's affecting your health, right, then I think that you got it. Because there are many people that regret, right, after they work so hard and then their health is failing, right?
Yep.
And then, oh no. And I think one good example is impact theory. I think someone asked him a similar question. I asked Tom a similar question. He was saying that this guy that set a goal, like, I need to be a millionaire by maybe 26 or 27. And he put himself in the hospital because of that. He was so anxious to the point where he couldn't function, and then he had to go to the hospital. So Tom was just saying that should never be the case where your goals, right, become so obsessive, right, that you lose sight of yourself as a human being, your own health.
Yep.
You know, and I think this also ties into perfection and progress. Sometimes as type A personalities, right, we are so eager at perfection to the point where it's like, if I don't get it, I get so obsessed to the point where I lose myself.
Yep.
And it affects my health. So definitely keep that in mind, right? And I think the last thing you can keep in mind is essentialism. Okay, for example, another example I give is when I first created Notion. Okay, I created it for what? Efficiency, right?
Yeah.
But I was so hung up with to create like this called
The perfect plan, right?
Yeah, the perfect thing, right? And then I was trying to create this progress bar, code some progress bar. So I spent so long trying to figure out how to code it, right? Then after I take a step back, I realized myself, oh my goodness, I'm 7 rating. Like, what in the world? This is not even important. What's my goal is to basically get things done, right? Whether I have the progress bar or not, or whether I figure this out or not, like, it doesn't matter. I just let go of it, outsource it, find someone to do it. What I did was this. I actually asked help from somebody.
Yeah.
And the person just gave me the code.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So because of my, that stubbornness, right, sometimes it holds you back. And I think you must be aware that be essential with your things, and then either outsource or let go of the things that are not important.
Right. So I totally agree on that. I follow people like Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Then on the fitness side, I follow people like Greg Doucette, right? So one thing that they point out, right, is that sometimes people have goals that they want to reach, right? But technically, that's not what they want, right? To a certain extent. So Gary Vee always talk about like your business. Your business don't have to be making $2 million. Don't have to be making $10 million. That's just an arbitrary thing that you set for yourself, right? When you are happy making 500,000, right? Why do you want to stretch yourself to go and make the million? Just because people tell you to do so, right? Greg Doucette, is a YouTuber, can go and check it out. So he talks about this also. He talks about fitness goals, right? Actually, most people's goals, right, if they just halve it, right, it's sustainable. When they try to stretch for the goal that they originally set for themselves, right, that's the one that's going to screw them up. Right. Like if you can healthily survive on 15% body fat or 12% body fat, why do you want to struggle to 6? Right. There is no sometimes people confuse the idea that what they die must reach that goal, even though when they stretch for it, they are not happy.
Right. Again, it's reverse engineering. It goes back to outcomes and happiness, authenticity as well. Because if I'm happy, right, in the process of striving, and I know that I want to make more impact with this podcast, right, then yes, I go for it, right? Even though I embrace the suck and I kind of keep my mind in check. So that's important as well. But I think if, let's say, what Ita is trying to say is that don't impose a certain arbitrary goal on yourself. So much so that it affects, like, your health and whatever.
There's a lot of few layers, right? First of all, your happiness shouldn't be tied to the outcome of the goal, right? You should be happy every day, right? Second of all is that, it's what you say, right? Don't let arbitrary things decide for what you want to do.
Right.
Like if you are very clear that you are doing this just for the money, then go for it, right? But if you are very clear, if you are thinking about doing this for, let's say, spreading the good message, or whether is it because you're happy to do it, right? Don't let other criteria decide whether you should go for it or not.
Sure. Well, and I think that kind of rounds up today's sharing. We come to the end of the last segment on when to quit. I know that we're giving you some insights, hopefully, but I do want to conclude with this statement which puts everything into perspective. Okay, I love this. I actually absolutely love this. Even after all that we've said, right, the decision still lies with you. It still ultimately lies with you. And I think you need wisdom. You need to really look within. And there is a prayer or really a quote that I felt was very useful. I'm going to read it out. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think the wisdom to know the difference is where's the toughest.
Yeah.
When do you know when to push on and when do you know you need to let go? Lah. But I do hope that this podcast and sharing from Ita and I has given you some insights, at least to make that decision and to find the wisdom when to quit or when to engage in grit. So with that, stay resilient, stay gritty, and stay wise also to know when to quit. And we'll see you all next time on the next podcast. Okay, see ya. Bye.
Bye.